In today's video, we're tackling 5 people who were ripped apart while taking selfies with animals. From a volunteer's fatal encounter with a silverback gorilla in Cameroon, to an expat's tragic final selfie with a lion in South Africa. But first we begin in India, where a young worker's quest for the perfect photograph would lead him into the jaws of a Bengal tiger. It was April 8, 2015. The midday heat in the lower reaches of Bannerghatta just outside Bengaluru pressed heavily on the open walkways of the biological park. Dry leaves crackled underfoot and groups of tourists milled about in the hazy warmth. Around the tiger habitat, crowds lingered longer, drawn by something powerful and predatory lurking just beyond the barriers. Pravin Kulkarni was a 26-year-old line technician from Hubli, visiting with 4 co-workers from the automotive parts factory where he worked. It was a Saturday team outing, loosely organized and casually supervised. Pravin was well liked at the factory, known for his sense of humor and habit of posting daily selfies to his WhatsApp groups. He had recently bought a mid-range smartphone and was experimenting with video clips for social media, hoping to start a channel highlighting travel spots around Karnataka. Friends described him as bold but not foolish, a characterization that would later prove tragically ironic. The group reached the tiger exhibit around 1:45 p.m., where several Bengal tigers were visible across a shallow moat. Bengal tigers are among the most powerful big cats on Earth, with males weighing up to 660 pounds and possessing the strength to drag prey twice their size. Their massive paws are equipped with retractable claws up to 4 inches long, designed to grip and tear flesh with devastating efficiency. A tiger's bite force can exceed 1,000 pounds per square inch, enough to crush bone instantly. The enclosure had a low rail to guide foot traffic with warning signs in Kannada and English advising visitors not to cross or lean over. Like many government-run parks in India, Bannerghatta suffered from staff shortages. Only 1 guard was visible that afternoon, posted 300 feet away by the elephant pen, too far to oversee the predator enclosures. Though signs warned of danger, they were easy to overlook without active enforcement. Pravin, noticing that 2 tigers appeared to be sleeping near the rocks, stepped over the rail despite protests from his co-worker Samir, who warned him against being stupid for social media likes. Pravin laughed and waved off the concern, positioning himself just beyond the barrier for what he believed would be the perfect shot. Standing at the concrete edge, he crouched facing Samir's camera phone. The others watched, some uncertain, some entertained by his boldness. In the background, the larger male tiger had risen, previously hidden behind a mound of grass and completely unnoticed by the distracted tourists. Tigers are masters of stealth, capable of moving through dense vegetation without making a sound. Their striped coats provide perfect camouflage, breaking up their outline and allowing them to remain invisible until the moment they choose to strike. The tiger moved low and fast across the moat before anyone had time to react. With a single bound that demonstrated the incredible power of its hind legs, it landed on the embankment and struck with devastating force. The massive predator seized Pravin by the left leg, dragging him down onto the rocks with such speed that Samir's video jolted violently. Pravin screamed, flailing with both hands, trying desperately to twist away from the tiger's grip. The animal clamped higher onto his hip and back, and pulled him halfway into the enclosure with effortless strength. Chaos erupted among the horrified spectators. Bystanders screamed in terror. Samir dropped his phone as he watched his friend being mauled. 1 guard fired a blank round into the air, but the sound only startled the tiger momentarily. It crouched defensively, then reasserted its grip with a deep, rumbling snarl. The attack was brutal and efficient, lasting less than 30 seconds. By the time staff arrived with poles and whistles, Pravin was motionless. The tiger had bitten through his lower spine and partially severed his neck. then dragged the body several feet before releasing it. Blood stained the rocks and ran thin into the moat, creating a horrific scene that would haunt witnesses for years to come. The animal did not retreat until zookeepers approached in a vehicle and forced it back with sound blasts. Emergency services called by the officials arrived in 20 minutes and declared Pravin dead at the scene. His body was retrieved under the supervision of forest officials and taken to a morgue in Bengaluru. Pravin's family brought his remains home to Hubli, where a cremation was held. Local officials offered condolences, but emphasized that park warnings had been clearly posted and deliberately ignored. New fencing was installed within weeks, raising the physical barrier and placing additional signs in multiple languages as a deterrent to future risk-takers. Officials closed the park for 2 days, citing a need to review perimeter barriers and visitor compliance. The tiger involved was not euthanized. It remained in the enclosure, considered to have acted according to its natural predatory instincts rather than displaying abnormal aggression. As Pravin's fatal pursuit of the perfect shot served as a stark reminder that barriers exist for a reason, thousands of miles away in Cameroon, a botanist would discover that good intentions couldn't protect her from the explosive rage of a gorilla. It was June 28, 2014. The Limbe Wildlife Center buzzed with the usual low activity. Keepers tending to enclosures, a few guided visitors moving between habitats. For the staff, it was another humid day of routine checks. But for one visiting volunteer from France, what should have been a quiet stop on a sanctuary tour became something far more violent. Lisette Marchand was a 38-year-old botanist who had arrived in Cameroon 3 weeks prior. On sabbatical from her public service role in Toulouse, she was volunteering with a French NGO involved in reforestation along the degraded slopes of Mount Cameroon. Known among colleagues for her calm demeanor and affinity for wildlife photography, Lisette had quickly taken an interest in the Limbe Sanctuary's rescue work. That morning, she joined 4 other international volunteers on an off-day tour arranged by local staff, an informal visit to the animal center located on the outskirts of the town. Lisette was especially drawn to primates, having previously written a blog series about conservation ethics and species sentience. When the group reached the enclosure of Mukoko, an adult male western lowland gorilla rescued 2 years prior from illegal captivity, she lingered behind the group. Western lowland gorillas are among the strongest animals on Earth, with adult males weighing up to 440 pounds and possessing the strength of 10 adult humans. Their massive arms span over 8 feet and are equipped with hands capable of crushing bone with minimal effort. A gorilla's bite force can exceed 1,300 pounds per square inch, nearly twice that of a lion. Mukoko, though fed and kept in partial view of the public, was not fully acclimated to human presence. A posted placard stated this clearly, as did the keeper on duty, who gave a verbal warning when he noticed Lisette kneeling close to the secondary fence with her phone angled toward her face. She acknowledged him with a smile but remained crouched, focused on framing the perfect shot. The fence was a double-gated system. The inner gate separated Mukoko's main living space from a smaller feeding zone. In the outer wire mesh enclosed both areas from visitor access. But that morning, in the rush of routine, the keeper failed to fully secure the inner latch, an oversight not uncommon during busy feeding hours. It created a small but critical vulnerability, one that would soon prove catastrophic. The attack began in terrifying silence. Without vocalizing or displaying any warning behavior, Mukoko suddenly charged with explosive force. He slammed his full body weight, nearly 370 pounds, into the inner gate with such tremendous impact that the latch gave way with a loud metallic snap. The gorilla surged into the feeding zone and directly toward the outer edge, where Lisette was still kneeling, completely unaware of the approaching danger. Before she could rise or turn to flee, Makoko reached through the mesh opening and seized her by the hair with one of his massive hands. Witnesses recalled the sickening thud, followed by a choking scream that cut off abruptly as Makoko yanked her forward against the fence with tremendous force. He began striking her rapidly, first with open palms that delivered blows equivalent to being hit with sledgehammers, then with the sides of his fists that landed like wrecking balls against her fragile human frame. The blows landed on her head, shoulders, and upper torso. Each strike was delivered with the full force of muscles that had evolved over millions of years to break branches, tear vegetation, and defend against predators. The other volunteers backed away in horror, shouting for help, while one ran toward the main office. The keeper on duty grabbed stones and began hurling them at the gorilla, joined moments later by a second staffer armed with a bucket of fruit. Makoko didn't respond to their desperate attempts at distraction. For nearly 40 seconds, he remained hunched over Lisette's limp form, breathing heavily, swatting at anyone who dared approach his victim. Eventually, Makoko retreated several feet, drawn by the scent of bananas and plantains that the keepers had scattered as a distraction. The staff quickly shut the gate behind them. Lisette was unconscious, her face bruised beyond recognition and one eye swollen completely shut. Her shirt was torn, ribs visibly caved in from the tremendous force of the gorilla's blows. The others helped carry her to the center's old Land Cruiser, her body limp and broken from the savage attack. The nearest medical post was 6 miles away along an uneven road. She went into cardiac arrest during the desperate drive, her damaged organs finally succumbing to the trauma. Attempts to resuscitate her at the understaffed clinic failed. Her injuries were simply too severe. The official cause of death was blunt force trauma to the chest and skull. She had multiple broken ribs, one piercing a lung, leading to internal bleeding and respiratory failure. Her cervical spine was also badly damaged from the initial pull against the wire mesh. French consular staff coordinated transport of her remains back to Toulouse. Her parents held a small private service attended by colleagues who remembered her passion for conservation. The Limbe Wildlife Center issued a single-page press statement calling the event a tragic and unforeseeable accident. Within a month, the gorilla enclosure was refitted with reinforced latches and a 3-step gate protocol. Makoko remained at the center under increased observation. Staff argued that the failure was structural rather than behavioral, ignoring the fundamental reality that captive gorillas remain wild animals capable of explosive violence. While Lisette's tragedy with the gorilla demonstrated what happens when wild instincts collide with human curiosity, in Costa Rica, a teacher would discover that a single step into a predator's domain triggers an explosion of prehistoric violence. It was December 12, 2016. The estuary at Cahuita stretched wide and still as December twilight settled over Costa Rica's Caribbean coast. Where the Rio Estrella met the sea, mudbanks emerged from receding waters, and the jungle behind Playa Negra grew quiet. But beneath the surface, ancient predators waited with endless patience. Felipe Rivera had arrived that weekend with 3 university friends, escaping his routine as a middle school science teacher in San Jose. At 30, he possessed the kind of restless energy that turns simple beach trips into adventures. His colleagues knew him for his humor and his ability to find stories in the mundane. Over the holiday break, the group had rented a coastal cottage, splitting their time between hiking trails and exploring the brackish waters where river met ocean. Warning signs dotted the area around the river mouth. A weathered red placard attached to a concrete footbridge displayed "Peligro Cocodrilos" in bold letters. Felipe and his friends had crossed that bridge multiple times during their stay, joking about crocodiles lurking so close to the tourist zone. The idea seemed almost absurd given the peaceful setting and steady stream of visitors. They overlooked that the American crocodile thrives in these transitional zones throughout Central America. Growing up to 15 feet in length, these apex predators patrol estuaries and coastal rivers with methodical precision. Unlike their more aggressive African cousins, they typically avoid human contact, preferring fish, birds, and small mammals. But when opportunity presents itself, their explosive power and ambush tactics make them devastatingly effective killers. That evening, as shadows lengthened across the water, Felipe spotted movement on the opposite bank. A crocodile lay motionless, half submerged, with only its eyes and ridged back visible above the waterline. From the bridge above, his friend Carla aimed her phone camera at the scene. Felipe grinned and announced his intention to create the perfect jungle photograph. He descended the muddy slope and waded into the brown water. First ankle deep, then to his knees, he moved closer to frame the shot. The visible crocodile remained perfectly still. Behind him, Carla urged him to hurry while the others watched with nervous laughter. Felipe positioned himself sideways to capture the best angle. But the attack came without warning. A second crocodile, completely hidden beneath the murky surface, erupted from the water. Its massive jaws clamped down on Felipe's left thigh with bone-crushing pressure. The impact sent him sprawling sideways as his scream pierced the evening air. He clawed desperately at the water, trying to regain his footing, but the predator twisted its body in its signature death roll. The violent rotation dragged Felipe deeper into the channel as his friends screamed from the bridge. One shoe tore free and floated away as the water turned crimson around the thrashing bodies. Felipe kicked frantically with his free leg, but the crocodile's grip was absolute. The animal rolled again, submerging both predator and prey beneath the surface. Bubbles rose from the depths as the struggle continued underwater. A local fisherman, alerted by the screams, sprinted from a nearby dock with a bamboo pole. He charged into the shallows, but by the time he reached the attack site, only ripples and blood remained. The crocodile had vanished with its victim into the deeper channels of the estuary. The fisherman called for help. Local authorities and park officials arrived within the hour and scoured the river mouth throughout the night, their spotlights cutting through the darkness. They recovered only Felipe's sandal and fragments of torn clothing. The murky water revealed nothing else. At dawn, two experienced divers entered the estuary. They located Felipe's body 80 yards downstream, wedged beneath a tangle of submerged roots. The crocodile had consumed his left arm entirely, and massive trauma to his torso indicated prolonged feeding. His left femur was shattered from the initial attack. Investigators confirmed the presence of at least 2 adult American crocodiles in the immediate area. Track measurements suggested the larger specimen exceeded 13 feet in length. Authorities made no attempt to capture or relocate the animals, recognizing their natural right to inhabit these waters. Felipe's remains were transported to San Jose 2 days later. His funeral drew fellow teachers, former students, and family members who remembered his infectious enthusiasm for life. The estuary continues to harbor crocodiles. Additional signage now warns visitors in Spanish, English, and German about the dangers lurking beneath the deceptively calm surface. As Felipe's fatal wade into crocodile-infested waters proved that some predators strike from the depths without warning, in South Africa, a veterinarian would discover that experience meant nothing when she stepped into the hunting ground of a lion. It was August 4th, 2013. Heat pressed down on Limpopo province like a weight, the air dry and still across the South African bushveld. Somewhere in the shade of scattered trees, a pride of lions rested through the midday hours. From the safety of their safari vehicle, tourists peered through telephoto lenses and whispered excitedly. But safety, as always, depended on staying where you belonged. Claire Dooley had lived in Pretoria for 8 years, working as a veterinary laboratory technician at the University Animal Sciences Department. At 52, the British expatriate possessed the kind of confidence that came from years of handling livestock samples and monitoring wildlife disease protocols. Her colleagues knew her as assertive and uncompromising, traits that served her well in laboratory settings, but proved dangerous when applied to wild animals. That August, Claire's younger sisters had flown in from England for their first African safari experience. She had booked a 2-day stay at a private game lodge on the western edge of Kruger National Park's buffer zone, eager to share her adopted country's natural wonders with family who had never ventured beyond London's suburbs. African lions in protected reserves like those scattered across Limpopo province have grown accustomed to the rumble of diesel engines and the sight of boxy safari vehicles. But their tolerance extends only to these familiar intrusions. The moment a human silhouette appears outside the protective metal shell, ancient predatory instincts activate with lethal efficiency. Lions can accelerate from 0 to 35 miles per hour in under 3 seconds, covering 50 feet in less than a second and a half, faster than most people can register the threat. Their retractable claws measure up to 1.5 inches long, sharp enough to shred through skin and muscle, while a single swipe can deliver over 400 pounds of force. Their bite exceeds 650 pounds per square inch, capable of crushing bone and anchoring prey during a takedown. On their second morning, Claire's group joined the scheduled game drive with a lodge-employed guide. Just after 11 a.m., their vehicle approached a granite outcropping where 7 lions had claimed the shade for their afternoon rest. Most of the pride lay sprawled in typical feline relaxation, their golden coats blending seamlessly with the dried grass. Cameras clicked softly as tourists captured the scene through open windows. Claire studied the composition through her phone's viewfinder. One lioness lay particularly close to the road, her massive head resting on crossed paws. The angle was perfect for the kind of photograph that would dominate her social media feed for months. Without consulting the guide or informing her sisters, she quietly opened the rear passenger door and stepped onto the packed dirt road. The guide's sharp command to return to the vehicle immediately cut through the morning air. Claire raised her free hand dismissively, assuring him she needed just one quick photograph before climbing back inside. She took several careful steps toward the resting lioness, her phone already raised to capture the perfect shot. What Claire failed to notice was the young male lion concealed in tall grass just 20 feet to her right. Partially hidden by a mopane bush, he had been watching the vehicle with the focused attention that precedes an attack. Unlike the relaxed females, his muscles were coiled and ready. The lion exploded from his hiding place, crossing the open ground between bush and road in a blur of tawny muscle and extended claws. Claire froze mid-step, caught completely off guard, as 400 pounds of apex predator struck her from behind. The impact drove her face first into the dirt as massive jaws clamped down on her neck and upper back. Screams erupted from the safari vehicle as the lion's claws raked across Claire's shoulder and scalp. Blood soaked through her khaki shirt within seconds as the predator's canine teeth, designed to crush vertebrae and sever spinal cords, found their mark with devastating precision. The guide leaped from the driver's seat, grabbing the lodge-issued rifle from its mounted bracket. His warning shot cracked across the bushveld, causing the lion to flinch but not release his grip. Claire's screams had already weakened to barely audible gasps. A second safari vehicle appeared from the opposite direction, its guide immediately recognizing the emergency. he accelerated toward the attack, using the vehicle's size and engine noise to force the lion's retreat. The predator finally released Claire and backed away several yards, tail twitching with agitation as he assessed this new threat. When the guides reached her, no pulse could be detected. The lion's attack had caused massive trauma to her cervical spine, with deep lacerations severing major blood vessels in her neck. The blood loss had been catastrophic and irreversible. Despite immediate attempts at resuscitation, Claire was pronounced dead at the scene. Authorities launched an immediate investigation. Their findings confirmed the incident as a fatal mauling resulting from a clear violation of established safari protocols. The lions involved were not destroyed, as wildlife officials determined the attack represented predictable defensive behavior rather than aberrant aggression. The young male had simply responded to what he perceived as a territorial intrusion. Claire's remains were transported to Johannesburg, then repatriated to England by her grieving sisters. A private funeral in Norfolk drew family members and former colleagues who remembered her dedication to animal welfare. South African media coverage remained brief and factual, public attention shifting quickly to other stories. The lodge resumed operations within weeks, implementing stricter guest briefing procedures and additional safety protocols. New signage throughout Limpopo's private reserves now emphasizes the lethal consequences of leaving vehicles during big cat encounters. Claire had stepped out for a better angle, leading to her demise. Following that pattern, in the dense Sumatran heat just yards from a cage, a young volunteer found himself face to face with violence more deliberate than instinct. It was October 16, 2017. Rain had passed through Gunung Lusur National Park that morning, leaving the dirt roads around Bukit Lawang slick with mud and scattered with fallen leaves. At the Wildlife Rescue Center built to rehabilitate animals seized from the illegal pet trade, the afternoon shift was winding down toward dusk. In the primate wing, no alarms were sounding, and no emergencies were anticipated. But in the space of 40 seconds, everything would change forever. Rizky Adawan was a 19-year-old biology student at Medan University who had been volunteering at the Bukit Lawang Wildlife Rescue Center for nearly 4 months. His weekend duties included cleaning animal enclosures, preparing feed for juvenile orangutans and macaques, and maintaining detailed logs of animal behavior patterns. Staff members liked him for his humor and enthusiasm, though they had grown concerned about his habit of taking phone videos with the animals during breaks, often joking about starting a nature vlog channel. Buddy, a chimpanzee, had been confiscated during a wildlife trafficking raid in Aceh 4 years earlier. Chimpanzees possess 5 times the pulling strength of an average human, with muscle fibers that can generate explosive power in their arms and hands. Even juvenile males entering adolescence can exert over 1,200 pounds of force per square inch with their bite, easily crushing bone and tearing through muscle tissue. At 6 years old, Buddy was entering the most dangerous phase of chimpanzee development, when adolescent males become increasingly territorial and aggressive. Raised in captivity since infancy, he displayed the behavioral abnormalities common to improperly socialized chimpanzees: unpredictable mood shifts, obsessive fixation on human faces, and sudden violent outbursts triggered by seemingly minor stimuli. Staff had repeatedly warned volunteers about maintaining safe distances from all primates, particularly Buddy, who was housed in semi-isolation due to his history of attacking handlers. His enclosure featured reinforced mesh barriers and a gated transfer chute designed to minimize human contact, but the outer cage bars still allowed limited visibility and access from the walkway. That afternoon, just after 4 p.m., Rizky and another volunteer named Iwan were completing their final enclosure checks. Most senior staff members were inside the main building conducting a feeding schedule meeting, leaving the two students largely unsupervised in the primate wing. Buddy was pacing restlessly in the outer run of his enclosure, his dark eyes tracking their movements with intense focus. Rizgi apparently decided that this was the perfect opportunity for social media content. He extended a selfie stick with his phone attached, kneeling sideways near the edge of the cage with his face approximately 2 feet from the steel bars. He laughed and told Iwan to make sure the chimp didn't steal his phone, then leaned closer to frame the perfect shot. But Buddy struck with lightning speed. The chimpanzee's right hand shot through the bars and clamped around Rizgi's forearm with crushing force. The sudden yank pulled the student off balance, sending him crashing face first into the concrete lip beside the enclosure. Before he could push himself up or pull away, Buddy's other arm reached through the bars and grabbed a handful of hair. With both arms now engaged, the chimp began systematically smashing Rizgi's head against the steel bars in repeated violent motions. The sounds echoed through the corridor, flesh striking metal, the grunts of the enraged animal, and Iwan's terrified screams for help. Each impact drove Rizgi's skull against the unforgiving steel with bone-crushing force. Iwan sprinted toward the main office, his shouts alerting a senior handler who grabbed a tranquilizer dart gun and raced back toward the primate wing. But the attack had already escalated beyond any hope of intervention. In the seconds it took to load and fire the dart, Buddy had sunk his 2-inch canine teeth deep into Rizgi's neck and shoulder, tearing through major blood vessels. The sedative finally took effect, causing Buddy to release his grip and retreat to the far end of his cage with jerky, uncoordinated movements. Rizgi lay motionless on the concrete walkway, blood pooling around his head and spreading across the floor in an ever-widening circle. Staff members immediately secured Buddy in an isolation chamber and attempted emergency first aid on Rizgi. No pulse could be detected. He was rushed by van to a small hospital in Bohorok, but doctors declared him dead on arrival from massive blood loss and catastrophic cranial injuries. Within 24 hours, the Wildlife Center released a brief public statement describing the event as a tragic accident and immediately suspended all volunteer access to primate enclosures. Buddy was not euthanized, but transferred to a more secure off-site facility while housing protocols underwent complete revision. Rizgi's family in Medan received private condolences from both the center and the university. No lawsuits were filed against the facility. The biology department held the quiet memorial service where professors spoke of Rizgi's passion for animals and his dreams of pursuing field research. The center has since installed additional physical barriers and banned all personal devices near primate enclosures. But among long-term staff members, the incident serves as a permanent reminder of how quickly observation can transform into violence. Thanks for watching. If these tales of deadly beasts piqued your interest, the next video features more gruesome predators. See you there.